Hello, it's Romanosky from Calgary, Canada. I'm shooting from the lug nuts facility, and the car behind me here is my 1986 Jaguar XJ-SC. And I am putting this car for sale on Hemmings, somewhat reluctantly. It's a lovely machine. I've really enjoyed owning it for a year, and I've just found myself with too many cars, and it's only a two-seater. With three little kids, I just don't get a chance to drive it. I've only put maybe 3,000 kilometers on it in the year that I've owned it. Anyway, so reluctantly, I'm letting it go. So this video, I will give a brief description about the XJS and what I think of it, and why I think it's just absolute bargain in the collector car world right now. And then we'll go through, this car in particular. I'll break this video up into sections with a table of contents. So if you're not interested in my assessment of the Jaguar XJS in the collector car world, you can skip to the paint meter readings or the conclusion or whatever you like. But I'll go and we'll do a walk around. We'll examine all the panels. We'll go inside and outside. We'll show some photographs of what it looks like underneath. I'll do a paint meter reading of the car, and then I'll start it up and let you hear it run. I've done several other videos on this car, driving videos. I've done a comparison video of the servicing of this car versus my Mercedes, which is similar vintage. I've done a video on the Jaguar V12 engine. So in my YouTube channel, I think there's probably 4 videos featuring this exact car. So there's probably 3 hours of coverage of me driving around on this and so on. So I won't repeat that for this one. But this is this is going to be current because some of those were done last year. Okay, so the XJS, I just think the world of this car. My dad had one when I was a kid, and that kind of got me interested in getting another one. And it came up. It was my friend's dad's car, and I actually had 2 of the same model year, both from parents of friends of mine. I had a red one and I had the brown one, and I sold the red one off on Bring a Trailer, and I kept the brown one just because I just like the color a little bit better. It was a used car. I think it had 40,000 kilometers, and my friend's dad bought it when it was a few years old. He had it for maybe 10 years. It went to his daughter. They didn't drive it for very long, and then parked it for like 15 years. And then I got the car, I think in September of 21, and did the reconditioning. So it went to my Jaguar mechanic, a sit at XJ Automotive, and we went through the car. Took the suspension out, took the front subframe out, addressed all the leaks, went through the injection system, the fuel system, took out the tanks. There's 2 tanks in the trunk of this. We acid dipped them and coated them and put it all back together. I bought new tires for it, and I spent $16,000 on the car, not including a bunch of my own work. So we really went through the car top to bottom and finished it last year in 2022. And it's been entirely reliable and trouble-free since then, and it's really been, giving me no trouble whatsoever. Always starts, always runs, doesn't kill the battery. It works perfectly. The AC is getting a little weak, well, probably close to non-existent. And I can't think of anything else that doesn't work on the car. I'll go through it. One of the headlamp washer or wiper mechanisms was off the car, so I bought a replacement for it. So I think that's the only thing I can think of that doesn't work on it. I really like the XJS. It was Malcolm Sayre's last car, who's the aerodynamicist for Jaguar, who did the D-Type and the racing cars, E-Type as well. The V12 engine was developed by Harry Munday and Walter Hussein, and it's a spectacular engine. This engine won Le Mans for Jaguar a couple of years. This car won the European Touring Car Championship with Tom Walkinshaw. The V12 engine in this thing is fantastic. If you go to Harry's garage or something, he just did a beautiful XJ-12C coupe, and can talk more about his engine. That one's modified, but even in stock form, it's just a lovely thing, smooth and powerful and torquey. Jaguar was a leader in suspension design in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. You know, they really were one of the pioneers of isolating the drivetrain components from the monocoque, which was new in the 60s, with subframes and so on. So the front and rear of this car are on subframes, and it is independent rear suspension and inboard rear disc brakes, and it really does a fantastic job of ride and handling and refinement. It's as quiet as a Rolls Royce. It's just a beautiful machine. It's sporty and fast and quiet and refined, and an absolute pleasure to drive. And that's a tribute to the engineering that goes into it, and the isolating the IRS from the monocoque at the front and the suspension, or at the rear, and the suspension at the front, and the characteristics of the V12 engine and so on, and all aerodynamics. It's very quiet, slippery shape actually. All of that together just adds up in a really wonderful machine. Nobody thought too much of it when it was new because it wasn't an E-Type. And they had problems with, all kinds of problems getting it into production, and the build quality in the UK in the mid-70s was dismal. But by the 80s, they really got it together. The fuel consumption in the car was terrible when it came out. But Michael Mays, was shopping around a stratified charge head to various manufacturers, and Jaguar bought that. And so, they redid the engine into an HE format, and that's not unlike what Honda did with their CVCC engine in the mid-70s to get around putting a catalytic converter in the car. So it retains, it's that concept, but developed for the V12 engine, which suits that concept perfectly, as it turns out. High compression, 11.5 compression to 1. I've done, one of the videos I did was comparing it to my 89 Mercedes S-Class, and I found it to be quieter, smoother, more refined, and surprisingly more economical, because of that engine. I just love this car. And the thing about it was in production for 76 to 95, and the sales just got stronger and stronger every year. They almost sold none of these in the late 70s and early 80s. But by the mid-80s, which this car is, Jaguar was then run by Sir John Egan, and he really did a lot of work on the quality control and stuff, and produced a couple variants of the car, including the Targa, which this is, and then later a convertible. I like the Targa better because I don't have to worry about convertible hydraulics, electric operation, and so on. And John Egan really turned that company around, and those were the best-selling years ever for Jaguar. I don't think they've ever recovered. Well, I could be wrong on that with the F-Pace. Maybe lately they produced more numbers, but the 80s were kind of the heyday for Jaguar. And they've made really, really competitive, beautiful machines. And anyway, I just can't say enough about it. It has a bad rap because of quality and because of cost of maintenance. But my argument is I'm not going to stand here and tell you that it's free to maintain. I mean, I did just spend 15 grand on it, but it's, my argument is no more expensive than anything else, or at least if it is, not by much, and if it is by a little bit, then you're more than compensated by the performance and refinement that the car offers. Like, every 911, you need to take the engine out every 10 years, and that's a $10,000 bill right there. Something like a Porsche 928 is every bit as difficult to work on as this car, and the parts are like 5 times as much. And ask me how I know that. I once spent $75,000 reconditioning a 928 GTS. You think that would be impossible, but the prices are like absolutely out of control on those cars, and it's not easy to get in anything. The Jaguar admittedly is a complicated car, and any servicing that you do to it is kind of involved, but it's straightforward, and the parts aren't expensive. So basically it's all labor. And admittedly, it does need expert care. You need somebody who knows what they're doing to look after it. And admittedly, you know, there's a lot more Porsche mechanics than guys who can work on your XJS competently. So, but if you get the right shop and the right mechanic who understands the car, you know, your bills maintaining an XJS aren't going to be, well, they're not going to be any different than maintaining a 928. They'll probably be less. They're not going to be much different than maintaining anything else from the 80s because they're just kind of old cars. And when you do, you know, if you approach it kind of intelligently and you do everything at once in certain areas of the car, like if you drop the rear subframe, then it's time to do the brakes and whatever axle seals and whatever else is going to be accessible when you do that. If you do the oil leaks, you know, and you have to drop the front suspension, well, then you just do all the seals, not just one. And if you approach it like that, you know, they're not too bad. And you know, if you took a 1986 911 Carrera, like with 96,000 kilometers and original paint, you know, what would that car cost? Like $70, $80, $90,000? This one's 20 or thereabouts. Okay, so you know, it's a fraction of the cost. And you know, I've owned, I think, 5 911s, and 4 of them needed gearbox rebuilds. Okay, so this one, you know, you may have to drop the subframe to fix the oil leak and the, you know, power steering pump or whatever it is, and it's and you know, it's an involved job. Yeah, but you don't have to rebuild the gearbox in it. So, you know, I think that you know, a lot of the there's a lot of misconception out there about the costs of an XJS, and having owned, you know, just about everything from the 80s, I can tell you that it's you know, it's not that much more, if any more at all, than anything else. I mean, you know, my old Mercedes aren't free to maintain either. Admittedly, the Mercedes is a lot easier to work on. I'll give it that. And you can see that in the video. But anyway, enough about the XJS. If you're watching this video, you probably know you want one already, and you're just trying to decide which one. This is a good example of, I guess I'm the 3rd owner of the car. It's original paint, it's never been hit. It's got all its original finishes, original interior, and so on. It's a driver. It's got, you know, it's got some marks on it inside and out. But I've gone through it. I've spent the 15 grand, and I've driven it 3,000 kilometers and trouble-free kilometers. So it's a you know, the next custodian, I think, you know, can just get in and drive this thing anywhere. So let's turn the camera around, and I'll go through it panel by panel. You know, each panel, I think, you know, there's a couple little touched up chips. I've tried to get to anything that was bare metal and get to it before it started to rust. The bonnet looks good. The driver's front fender, I can't really see anything on. The driver's door, there may have been, yeah, I recall a couple little marks on the rear fender, door dings, and otherwise it looks pretty good. I've got I touched up a little piece there where the paint was starting to bubble, and so I treated it with Por 15, and it's not, you know, I took off all of the surface rust, so that's not going to come back, but I just treated it. The rear deck lid looks good. I think there's a fine scratch in here somewhere. Well, I can't really see it. You know, if you look at it and get the right light, you can see the odd scratch. If we open the boot, if you close the boot too hard, the corner will scuff the paint here. And you can see that I also use some Por 15 just in the seams. So just a tiny little bit of corrosion coming through. So I treated that with Por 15 so if the water sits in the channel here, then it's not going to rust in this area. Okay, and I did that on the bonnet too. You don't need a lot of pressure to close the rear boot. There is a little bit of a, you know, right here, that's when we were trying to figure out the fuel system. and the fuel ECU lives back there. And unfortunately, the bracket there was over tightened on the inside, and it just kind of caused that little mark and touched up. Wasn't very happy about that. Okay, so that's the passenger rear fender, passenger door. There's another little door ding. You can see it right there. Okay, but pretty good. And for all original paint from 1986, you can't really ask for too much more than that. Let me turn on my handy paint meter here, and we can just go through and verify that it's original paint. Now, original paint is like 200 micrometers. This is calibrated in micrometers. That's 1/100th of a millimeter. So, you know, after a while, some parts are polished. It gets a little bit thinner than that, but I'm expecting, numbers between 1 and 2 for the most part. And that's factory paint. If it was repainted, you would see 3s, 4s, and 5s generally. Okay. And if there's filler in it, then you'll either not get anything at all, or you'll get 1,000 or 2,000. Basically 1 millimeter. If it's bad, it'll be more than 1 millimeter. Like if there's a dent and it's just filled in, nobody's bothered to do the metal work on it, it could be 3 or 4 millimeters, in which case this machine won't even pick it up. But you can see walking around it that it's all original paint. Okay, and the deck lid. Now there'll be slight differences depending on the way the paint is laid down from the factory. It's a very precise instrument. Okay. And finally the bonnet. All right, so we can establish that, the car does in fact have its original paint. Let's have a look at chrome, rubber, and glass. Okay, so the bumpers are in good shape. There's no, there's no noticeable scuffing. These are plastic, and on one of them, the chrome finish is peeled off. I did buy another one of those. It's in a box here. So I did buy a replacement. I just haven't bothered to fit it yet. And then as well, for whatever reason, I've got a wiper arm on that side, but not that side. And again, I did buy this used assembly, and I have not put that in yet. So that just, I don't even drive it when it's raining, so I don't really care about that. Okay, so, but the rubber is good. The bumpers aren't scratched. The lenses are still clear. Gaskets around the side lamps are still good. The rub strips on the bumper are good. The windshield has some light pitting. The chrome is still nice. It's got some, some swirl marks in the chrome. The rubber is still pliable. The rubber on the target top is still nice. So no issues there. The chrome's all nice. Mirrors, door handles, filler cap, rear bumper isn't scuffed. Rear tail lights are nice. Light swirl on, kind of uniform light swirl on all the chrome. The locks work, power door locks work. The little bit of I'm not sure what that is, but again, a little bit of oxidation on the chrome, and it all looks pretty good. It's not all dried up. Okay. All right, so it's a solid. Again, I don't know how you'd expect. You wouldn't, much better on a 96,000 kilometer car from 1986. So it was about as good as you could expect. Wheels are in nice shape. They haven't been refinished. I did buy the Vredestein Sprints, and they were in Canada, I think they were $500 each. So they weren't cheap. There was a Dunlop version, and I think Pirelli, it came new with Pirelli P5s. I think they are remanufacturing those, but they weren't available when I bought them. And I just hate it when dealers buy these cars and put on crappy tires that aren't speed rated. These are VR rated 150 mile, well, I think they're 180 mile an hour tires. It's just so awful when you see these cars with cheap tires. So I wasn't going to do that. The Vredesteins are, as good as anything, and they look nice, and they have the proper sidewall, and they have the proper speed rating. But any proper tires for these cars are expensive. Okay, badge is nice, and I think for the exterior, that wraps it up. I think the front fog lights are unbroken. The front air dam is a little bit chewed up, you can see. Nothing's rusty under there. All the fasteners are still good. It doesn't really have much in the way of stone chips at all. Just a few odd, well, or even hard to find. Hardly any stone chips at all. Let's talk about the fabric. So the soft top is good. This cover, no matter what I do, I can't get that last fastener. It's just too hard. I don't know if it shrunk or if I need to compress the top more or whatever, but I just can't do it. I can get one done, but I just can't get the other one done. Carpets are nice. Those are two lockable compartments. That's my goofy kid's cup holder for child seat. The leather is original, and it's the original type of leather that they went away from when they went to water-based tanning, and you just can't get leather like this anymore. You can't replace it. You can't get leather that smells like this. It's dyed all the way through, and it still has its original leather. It's shrunk a little bit, which is what this is. And you can see it's pulling out a little bit there, but I am very reluctant to change it just because it smells so nice. And I don't mind a bit of honest patina in a car, I'd rather have the original old leather than resurface it with something that it just isn't as nice. Okay, door panels are good. All the chrome is good. The door locks work, the mirrors work, the power locks work. We get in the car, we can look at the instrument cluster. It's showing 96,037 kilometers. I bought it kind of 92 and change, I think. Stereo works. I have tapes for the tape deck, but when I had my red XJS, it had the owner's manual. It came with a cassette tape that said, "Welcome to the world of Jaguar." And I thought, oh, I wonder what that is. I'll go put it in the cassette. And then I put it in the cassette and it ate the tape. so that's my welcome to the world of Jaguar. Anyway, so I've been too scared to put a tape in there and try it. Trip computer works, Windows work, speed, the cruise control works. AC did work, and it's just faded to almost nothing now. So it is low on refrigerant. It has not been converted to R134A, so it's still got the old R12, I guess, in it, and so which I don't think anybody can refill. So AC, you'd have to probably convert it to R134. We can see again the seats shrunk a little bit. There's a slight little tear there, but otherwise okay. I'm giving these seats generous applications of hide food and so on, And in the driver's seat that I've sat in, it's actually come back quite good. This one nobody sits in it, so it's still a little bit hard, but it has softened up. Okay, that door panel's good. The wood is pretty good. We've got some cracking on the veneer on the glove box, but otherwise it's nice. I'll bring you the Targa top panels here now. Okay, so these panels are in decent shape. They've got a little bit of wear, on the edges where they fit together, but they're serviceable and they look fine. Show you that. On the underside, the felt headliner material sticks for a while, and then it can kind of come undone. So I really should, if I was keeping the car, I'd take this off and I'd apply some adhesive and get the material still in decent enough shape, a little bit discolored over there. But I'd probably, try to figure out how to do that, or buy some material and redo it. But it's okay, And that one's a bit worse. The passenger one's in better shape here. Let's show you that. So again, you can see it's kind of coming off a little bit here. So it really should be, you can just use some spray adhesive and put that down. Just haven't got to that yet. Let me show you what they look like when they're in place. Okay, so there they are in place. You can drive this car. You could drive the car like that, although I never have. And they line up pretty good. It's a little bit of a fiddle to get it in without rubbing the edges, which is why there's a little bit of a wear there. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually pretty good. These panels they live in this bag here in the trunk, and then it attaches to the firewall. Obviously the spare tire and the cover are there, and the battery is there. And the trunk is nicely finished and usable, and the jack is wrapped up in its own little bit of carpet there. Okay, so I'll take these off and I'll store them in the. So those store away neatly like that. The top on these was actually done by the company Tickford, which is a coach building company, and I think Jaguar bought them. I could be wrong on that, but Tickford would have done all the Aston Martin bodies pre-DB4. So the DB2 through DB24 and Mark III were done by Tickford, and so that's where this car went to have these modifications, to modify it into the Targa. And I think it's really quite successful. It's a unique car, and again, you don't have the worry of the expensive, electro-hydraulic electric tops. Okay, so the tires. Well, we went through the paint, we went through the rubber, the glass, the trim. We went through the tires. Of course, they only have like 3,000 kilometers on them. Interior, leather, carpet. Went through the roof. And so, well, I guess that pretty much completes the walk around. We did the paint meter. I can fire the car up and we can listen to it run. I suppose that's the next thing we'll do. And it's just been great. It's never given me any trouble. I drive it on hot days. It's in traffic. I was boiling, the car wasn't boiling, I was boiling. We were in traffic for an hour the other day, and the car didn't miss a beat. It hardly ever gets hot. The temperature hardly ever even gets off cold. So it never gets close to overheating. And drivability remains perfect. So let's start it up, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, 5.3 liter V12. Now, this is absolutely a world-class engine. This engine won Le Mans in a couple of years, 30 years after it was designed. It won the British Touring Car Championship. It is a lovely thing. Don't let anybody tell you any different. It was originally designed as a 4-cam engine for the XJR 13 Le Mans car. I think then they ruled out the 5-liter prototype cars, and the engine was stillborn. And even that engine, and this is like, I don't know, 73 or 74 or something like that, 72 maybe. And even that engine was loosely based on 2 Jag twin cam engines from the 50s. So, I mean, they really had it right. And this would have been Walter Hayes and Sir William Lyons, Harry Mundy, who would have developed, well, in fact, both these engines. And they used motorcycle engine kind of technology at the time, and really made a masterpiece with the Jag twin cam 6, and then put kind of 2 of those together in a 4-cam head and made a Le Mans engine out of it in a 5-liter version. That never went anywhere because of the regulations, and then it was shelved. Or wait a minute, no, that would have been in the 60s. Sorry, the XJR13, no, the XJR13 was a Le Mans car. The XJ13, like from a Le Mans car from the 90s. The XJ13 would have been in the early 60s. Okay, so the 4-cam engine would have been in the 60s, and then they dusted it off when the E-Type started getting a little bit uncompetitive in the early 70s, and stuck it in an E-Type in carbureted form. Okay, but enough about that. It's a fantastic engine. It's the stratified charge necessitates like a really big spark, necessitating a fairly advanced ignition system. There's not a lot of room in the engine bay to cool it, and there's lots of little rubber hoses, but they've all been replaced. The gaskets have all been replaced, and this car doesn't leak. I think the bottom might have a little bit wet, but it never leaves a spot. Okay, to start the car, we can get in, turn the radio down, turn the fan off, and we'll start it here. And it fires right up, and the ignition goes off in a few seconds, and the oil pressure's in kilopascals, and I don't use kilopascals enough to remember, but it's got healthy oil pressure, and all those needles stay where they're supposed to. And again, it idles totally steady. Noises at all. That jockey pulley that I was talking about is just this one down there, and it's just an idler pulley, and it's only if it gets to like -10 or something that it screeches a little bit. So it's about the easiest thing in the whole car to change. Even at a Jag dealership, they won't charge more than about an hour labor for that. Okay, so and I just changed the oil, like 20 kilometers ago. Anyway, it's a lovely piece of engineering. I mentioned as well, with some of the seams, I saw a little bit of rust coming through. So I sort of sanded all that off, and I just put a line of Por 15. It's a little bit sloppy, but I just put that on the edge, just so, because these channels will pool water if it's in the rain, and so I just wanted to protect the seams with that little bit of Por 15. I should go over it with a touch-up paint, but I just haven't bothered. Okay, I just replaced the hood struts, and all the oil and coolant and brake fluid and diff fluid, all that stuff was replaced. All these little fuel hoses, all of that's new. The gaskets were new. We dropped the subframe. I'll include a list of I'll include all the work orders so you can see everything that was done. Okay, let's finish it up by having a look under the car. First of all, I did put on that Jaguar V12 badge. We can see this front lip spoiler is a little bit chewed up. There's a little bit of a dent there. But underneath here, you know, it's not rusty, and the fasteners are, like I said, you can still get those off. Not gonna break on you, and even under the bumper and so on, okay? And so, underneath it's just a used car. You know, we can, and you can't see too much because of the subframe, well, in terms of corrosion, it's in a lot better shape than my Mercedes of 1989, with more, I guess, similar kilometers. And that one's actually pretty good too. So none of these hoses, you can see, you know, the ends aren't corroded. There's no sort of surface rust, you know, on the panels. Even these painted metal pieces, you can see just a tiny little bit of corrosion, okay? It all looks pretty good. There's no corrosion in the wheel arches, or the sills, or the floors, and you know, the brake lines aren't rusty. The exhaust has been on, the exhaust is original. More on that in a bit. But in terms of, you know, the lower sills, you know, all these fittings, fasteners, suspension pieces, you know, it all looks pretty good in there. You know, it's a little bit wet. I had all the leaks fixed. It does not drip. There's nothing on the floor. You know, there's a little bit of a seepage, who knows, coming from who knows where. But the rest of the car is dry underneath. And like I said, it does not drip at all. I have it up in the air, and I can put anything underneath it. It's not gonna matter, unlike that car. Okay, so if I shine that up in there, all kinds of stuff in there, but none of it's leaking. You know, I'm not sure where that's coming from. Bell housing, but there's nothing above it. It's a little tight in there. So who knows? But again, it doesn't drip, and you're not going to go, you know, try to sort that drip out. You'll wait for something big to go, and then drop the whole, assembly and sort of tackle everything at once. And more light in there. Okay, so pretty good. Like I don't know how you'd, you know, expect much better for any British car, you know, of this era. Okay, and let's have a look at the IRS, and this is that famous Jaguar subframe that has the inboard rear disc brakes. I suppose you'd want to see that there's lots of life left on those because they're not the easiest things to change. And you know, a little bit of corrosion on the bottom of the subframe. So if I did do the brakes, I'd probably take that out and powder coat it, but it's pretty good here. You know, there's nothing in the axles that's leaking, or axle seals, and still has nice paint on, you know, the springs and so on. There's the rear disc brake, there's no leaking caliper. Brake lines are still in nice shape. All looks pretty good. Trying to get that for you. And there's the other one there. All right. There is a bit of an exhaust leak from right here. And I did order a stainless exhaust for it, waited 6 months, and then nothing came, so I quit. So you could replace this section of pipe. I really like the noise it makes. It's just a little bit louder than stock. And so even though I could replace that pipe for a few $100, I've left it alone just because I like the noise it makes. It really does kind of purr. And, you know, I've been searching out, trying to figure out a way to redo this exhaust, but have it make a little bit more noise. You know, even maybe a side exit like some of the race cars, but I haven't really got anywhere with that. I don't know I don't know what you do. So I tried, I did order that stainless system, but I even think I would have been disappointed with it. And I got tired of waiting after 6 months. So anyway, this is the way it is. If you need to replace that, it's just a straight pipe. But I like it. I like it the way it is. Okay. So I think that the next section we'll go and we'll look at the maintenance records. Maybe I'll just sort of go through it again slowly so you get a good look at everything. But it's pretty tidy. One thing I'll show you, it was kind of jacked up badly and the paint started cracking, and so I put some Por 15 on those sections. There's no rust under there, but I wanted to do that to protect the paint, so I did that on both sides. You know what, I guess I sprayed over that so it's not black anymore. I just didn't do it on the other side. But I believe I did that on all 4 corners just because the jacking, whoever jacked it, cracked the paint, and then there was some rust starting. Okay, so that was ground off and then recoated. Another slow pan here. There's a fuel tank. I ordered all the exhaust at once, and the tips came separately from the stainless exhaust. I got the tips, which were in the box, but I haven't put them on. And we can see it back there under the bumper. And the rear trunk is good. And when we took out the fuel tanks, there's no corrosion underneath the fuel tanks. I've seen other XJSs, but that's the case. Okay, so the next section, the final section, I'll just put some PDFs of or JPEGs of the spreadsheet showing all the work, and then copies of all the work orders I've done on the car. So about $15,000 worth. So I might as well show you this box of extra stuff. That is something called a jockey pulley, and it's basically a tensioner for the alternator belt. The one that's in there, when it gets cold, like if I leave it outside and it's like minus 10 degrees Celsius, so quite cold, I get a little bit of squeaking from the bearing. And so, sooner or later, we'll need to replace that. It's only a 1-hour job. So that's what that is. I have the headlight bezel. This is a mud flap that I haven't put on. I've got a couple heater hoses. I've got 2 new exhaust tips. I'll talk more about the exhaust in a minute. I've got, I guess I've got another Jaguar badge for the engine for some reason. And these, I'm not even sure what those are for, but they're seals for something or other. And then I've got, this is more exhaust stuff. At one time I was going to buy a stainless exhaust for it, and that's what that is. And then, I did, this is really tough to find this. And I couldn't find one any better, but I did find a V12 badge for the front grille. And I got another hose here, and that's an extra Bosch injector. Okay, so it takes 12 of those. All right, so that's what's in here. And I guess that's the original battery bracket that doesn't fit the new battery, so I just have it, and no idea what that is. Okay, so that's my box of parts that come with a car. All right, so that'll wrap up the video on this 1986 Jaguar XJS. I'm going to stick it on Hemmings, and I'll do the make an offer option there. So I'll just receive offers on the car, and but I think hopefully that gives you enough confidence. I know, you know, an XJS is a little bit scary because if you get one that's been neglected, or you bought it like I did, you're going to have to go through it, and it's going to be 15 grand to get it working properly. But of course, I've already done that, and then I put another 3,000 kilometers on it just to test everything, and it's been a real pleasure. I got to say, and I can't imagine anybody's going to be disappointed with the car. You know, it's not a cream puff anymore. It's all its original finishes. You know, so over, you know, whatever 35 years, it's picked up some marks and so on, but overall it's an excellent example and an absolute bargain in the classic car world. More important, it's just a real pleasure to drive. Okay, so with that, Lromanosky, Calgary, Canada. Please like and subscribe, and either bid on this car or pass it on to somebody who you think might enjoy it. Thank you.